What's up, everybody? It's Labor Day, Monday, September 2nd, 2024, and today we are going to go back to school. My name is Corey Evitts, and I am not a rock star. Alright guys, again, my name is Corey Evitts, and I am not a rock star, but I am a guy that was recently asked to go back to my high school and speak to the entire student body. So on today's episode, the first ever episode of the Not a Rockstar podcast, we're going to be showing footage of my speech to the student body at Massac County High School in Metropolis, Illinois. And then after that, I will be having a discussion with the principal of Massac County High School, Mr. Parker Windhorst. Now, let's go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping. Because this is the first episode, let me explain to you what this podcast is going to be and what we're going to be doing. So, again, I'm Corey Evitts, and I'm a guy that quit my job 7 years ago to pursue my lifelong dream of being a full-time musician. So if you are watching the video version of the podcast, you can see I am inside of a sexy 2022 Honda Odyssey, and you can probably see my equipment behind me. This is my touring van. So like I said, I quit my job 7 years ago, and I've been touring nonstop ever since. I've been averaging about 225 shows a year. And so a big part of this podcast is going to be bringing you inside of my world. Throughout the episodes, I will be telling stories of things that happen on the road. I'll be talking to you about the album I'm currently recording. I will be interviewing, or rather I should say I will be having discussions with other musicians. So I've been traveling all over this part of the country. That would be Western Kentucky, Southern Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Tennessee, Alabama. And so I've met a lot of great musicians, and my home community of Paducah, Kentucky, we have tons of extremely talented people. So every so many episodes, I'll be talking to a fellow musician, and then again, talking about things I'm experiencing myself while touring, while recording. I'll be telling stories about my development, my childhood. I'll occasionally have people on the show from my hometown. I might bring my mom on at some point. But another huge focus of this podcast is going to be talking to the real rock stars. So I may not be a rock star. I haven't made it big, and I may never make it big. I think I've made it schmedium. You know, I'm doing okay, making a good living, but I may never get to that level, and that's fine, because I've had the privilege of meeting the real rock stars. And these are the people that uphold our communities, our neighborhoods, and that make this country, this great nation of ours, what it is. So I'm going to be talking to a wide variety of guests, people in all different professions, all different backgrounds. And just on the first few episodes, we're going to be talking to the mayor of Paducah, Kentucky, Mr. George Bray. I am going to be having a discussion with my friend Josh, who used to pitch for the Chicago White Sox. I'm hoping during the holidays we can get a UPS driver on to talk about their experiences during the busiest commerce season of the year. We will be talking to a psychologist and therapist, Dr. Bree Shelby, and asking her about what it's like to be counseling people in modern day society. So a wide variety of guests, but these are the people that make our lives, they make our communities what they are. So I will be doing that. We'll be talking music. I'll be talking to other musicians, and you'll be riding along with me the entire time in this minivan. Okay, last May, just a few months ago actually, I was asked to go back to Massac County High School and talk to the entire student body at something called Senior Signing Day. So we are now going to show footage of that speech, and then I will be picking up the principal of Massac County High School, Mr. Parker Windhorst, and he will be discussing with me the joys and the challenges of being a public educator. So here we go. Here's the footage from last May, me at Massac County High School.
Massac County, please help me in welcoming back the pride of Barber Drive, our very own Corey Evitts.
Proud of you. Welcome out.
How's everybody doing? This should be interesting today. I'm really not used to this setting. I'm used to people having refreshment and then yelling Freebird at me. Or the latest one is, Zach Bryan! You know any Zach Bryan? So if any of y'all ever meet Zach Bryan, let him know from me he has a cult of white dudes that are really into him and they enjoy cheap beer and Red Bull. So, the first thing I want you all to do today, just humor me for a second. I want you to imagine something. I don't even know if people your age had puzzles when you were kids because you probably had tablets. But when I was a kid, there were always kids in my class that were really into puzzles. I wasn't. I was into Legos. But just imagine, just a second, that you go out and you buy a puzzle. And it's a huge puzzle. It's a 10,000 piece puzzle. And you're pumped for it. And you get home and you empty all the pieces out of the box and you realize every piece in this box is the exact same piece. Same cut, same shape, same color. Obviously you're going to be upset because you're not even going to be able to make a picture out of that. It's going to make nothing. Now imagine, same thing, you go buy this 10,000 piece puzzle, you dump all the pieces out, and everything's going well, but you're noticing as you're putting it together, about half of the pieces are faded. They look old, they look worn, they look dull. So some of the pieces are great, they're glossy, they're colorful. Other pieces are faded. And sure, you're going to get a complete picture at the end, but half of it's going to be ugly. It's going to be faded, jaded. You're going to be disappointed. Now this is the worst one, this scenario. This did happen to me one time when I was a kid putting a puzzle together. Imagine you get the whole thing finished and you're ready for the last piece, and there is no last piece. You're missing one puzzle piece. Now, I have OCD. That would wreck me. Okay? That's probably the worst scenario of all. Today, I want to talk to you about how your life, all of our lives, are like a giant puzzle. All of the pieces fit together. And there is a temptation that we all face to just go along, to just kind of be like everybody else, be a cookie cutter, be a little mediocre, but that would be like having a puzzle where all the pieces are the same. There is no picture, there is no masterpiece. A lot of you will be tempted when you go away to school or you're playing sports or you enter the workforce to just give enough effort to get by. But the kind of picture that paints is a dull picture. You're not being your true self, you're not being your best self. And this is uncomfortable to talk about. But some of you in a room this size have maybe even considered quitting entirely, dipping, being finished with life. And that's the worst case scenario at all because none of you can be replaced. As far as my story is concerned, everything has fit together like a puzzle, but at the time I couldn't see how all of that was working together. So I want to give you a real quick summary of my life. I grew up in this town. Like a lot of people my age, I grew up playing sports. That was always my thing. I had an older brother that I really, really looked up to. My big brother was my hero. He played baseball, so I would tag along to all my brother's baseball games. And I remember one year, I was probably about 5, and I loved it. I loved watching the older kids. But one year they won state, Illinois state champs, and that was a pretty big deal in our community. And so I went on to play baseball. I wanted to be like my big brother. I played baseball. I played basketball. But then at the age of 13, something happened to me. I was watching TV one night, and I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan on TV. Now, I don't know if you guys know who that is. Stevie Ray Vaughan is one of the greatest guitar players of all time. So I remember I was in my parents' house, and my uncle and aunt came over. They were talking to my mom and dad, and I was in the back room watching TV, and something happened. I was so mesmerized by that. And I said, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so that's when I knew That's who I'm supposed to be. So all throughout my teenage years, I played music. I played in a Christian rock band. We played a lot of area churches, played in Western Kentucky, Southern Illinois. We did, festival events, youth group events, and that was awesome. And I got to meet a lot of great people. I had tremendous experiences doing that. It was honestly a very adult experience. I was 14, 15 years old, and we were booking our own shows, writing our own lyrics, dealing with people twice our age. At one point, I met a local youth pastor, and I was fascinated by this guy because when he would talk to me, he had a speech impediment. He would stutter. But then the guy could play guitar and sing, no stutter. He could sing, beautiful singing voice, very talented guy. And he kind of mentored me a little bit when I was a teenager. He'd let me come along and play in his band sometimes. And I had so many experiences like that. I went on to play in the drum line in high school, made friends with people that are still my friends today, majored in music in college, moved back to this area. I taught music myself for several years, and finally worked my way up to where I could quit my job and perform myself full-time. I've been doing that now for 7 years. I've played close to 2,000 shows. I did release an EP 5 years ago. It did very well, and now I'm to the point where I can start releasing hopefully an album maybe every other year, and also hoping to start a podcast. So if I just stopped my story right there, happy ending, I just gave you the Netflix summary of my life. Great story. Age 13, decide you're going to play guitar, work hard, it happens. Living my dream. But I would be leaving out a whole bunch of details that are very pertinent to my story. First of all, I had to do any number of things that I didn't really want to do, or they seemed boring or mundane. I did not always have jobs playing music. I worked at Fort Massac when I was 16 years old. I was a peon. I picked up driftwood that floated out of the river. This guy named Pat Whalen and I wrecked a John Deere Gator. Both got a concussion. When I was 17, I started working at the Dippin' Dot factory in Paducah. I did that for 4 or 5 summers. I didn't particularly like doing those jobs. They were just a job. But I did meet people along the way that became my friends. I became friends with a guy at Dippin' Dots named Don. Don was about my parents' age, and we hit it off. We were both big baseball fans. He would come out in the factory, give me updates on scores. And I had any number of experiences like that, even going to class. This isn't a big revelation. I'm assuming a lot of you guys feel the way I did. I didn't particularly like school. If you would have told me when I was 15 or 16 I could just play in the drum line and eat lunch with my friends and then go home every day, that's what I would have done. But even things like going to Mrs. Moore's English 3 class, or even PE with Coach Hossman, I look back now and I see how all of that fit together in this giant puzzle that's my life, but it's also all of our lives. So I'm going to explain that. I'm going to kind of talk about that, but before I do, I want to talk about one major detail that I left out. I want to talk about the worst time of my life. When I was a small child, I had several situations going on that could be very traumatic for a little kid. And by the age of 7, I'd already developed some issues that really my parents didn't know about. I had some things happen to me, and it caused a lot of problems for me. It caused me to walk around with a lot of guilt that I didn't deserve. And then when I was 12 years old, I could no longer hold it all together. I could no longer control my own mind. It was the worst time of my life, and I can't even begin to describe to you the darkness and the loneliness and the isolation and the pain that I felt as a 12-year-old. I was in the 6th grade, and I hated my life, and I just wanted it to be over. I lost a desire to do everything. Nothing made me happy anymore. My friends would knock on the door, "Hey man, you want to play basketball?" No desire. I had no appetite. I did not want to eat. And the only time I felt good is when I was asleep. But the problem is when I would lay down to sleep, I couldn't sleep. It was almost as if I was no longer a human being, and the darkness almost completely overtook me. And if it wasn't for my religious upbringing, I think I would have dipped. because at that point, death seemed preferable to me, and it seemed like a better option than life. There was a young man who was a school counselor at Metropolis Middle School at the time. I think he had just graduated college. And I remember one day he took me out to the playground, we sat on the swing set, and he bought me a Coke, and we talked about Garth Brooks, we talked about baseball. He didn't have all the answers, he didn't have the answer for me. But he was just one of many people that really helped me to gradually get out of that. And I think back now and I'm like, what would have happened if I decided to go through with that, if I would have dipped at age 12? You know, you never really can know what would happen. Obviously, that would have affected my parents, it would have affected my friends. But I know what wouldn't have happened. A year later, I never would have seen Stevie Ray Vaughan on TV. I never would have had all of those experiences I've had now, growing up playing music and now living my dream and doing what I wanted to do when I was 13 years old. And now I can look back because I'm starting to see the puzzle come together, and I see the pieces I couldn't see at 12 or even at 15 or 20 or 25 years old. And I'm realizing every aspect of my life and all the other lives of the people around me are fitting together to make this beautiful picture. That young man that helped me out when I was 12 years old, his name is Marcus Grace. His little cousin is Jack Turner, who's sitting in the crowd today, and Jack is one of my former students. That guy I made friends with when I worked at Dippin' Dots, Don Canada, is now the mayor of Metropolis. And it's very helpful when you want to organize a music festival, when you can walk into City Hall and say, hey Don, can we get the streets blocked? Yep, no problem. That youth pastor I met when I was a teenager that stuttered, but he could play guitar and sing, that guy is one of my best friends. His name is Toby Glass, and he's filming me right now for a podcast. And maybe the craziest one of all, when I was a little kid tagging along with my big brother watching him play baseball, there was kind of a tall, lanky, mouthy kid on his team that played catcher. And that guy's name is Parker Windhorst, and he's the principal of this high school. Everything coming together, working together. Now, why is this important to all of you? Well, first of all, there's any number of things you have to do in your life you don't really want to do. I highly doubt most of you want to learn about DNA and zygotes and chromosomes. Right? I mean, things haven't changed that much. You guys aren't that interested in that, are you? English class. I hated reading The Great Gatsby. I was not interested. I hated reading Moby Dick. Not interested. We got 6 people who are, or they're not. I don't know if they're agreeing with me or disagreeing. But I can tell you this right now, I have to type contracts. I've averaged over 200 shows a year for the last 7 years, and I have to type contracts to send to businesses if I want to get paid. So even though I didn't like Mrs. Moore's English class, I respect Mrs. Moore for teaching me how to read and write proper English, because a lot of people can't do that, and spoiler alert, even more musicians can't do that. You are a piece to the puzzle. So you think every day that you're just going through the motions. I just got to get through this. I'm legally required to go to school. You have no idea what you are learning every day. You have no idea the people you are meeting or the impact you're having on their lives. Don't be a carbon copy of somebody else. Don't just do something because everybody else is doing it. Don't ever let anybody tell you who or what you are because of the color of your skin, your gender, how much money your parents make, or even what you've done in the past. You are more than that, and there is only one of you. Now I'm going to dip back into advanced biology, Mr. Pirtle's advanced biology class that I had as a junior. We learned that there are no 2 people alike. Nobody has the same DNA other than identical twins. But even identical twins have different experiences, and from the time they're born, their brains start forming differently because they have slightly different experiences. If you take 2 kids who are identical twins, by the time they're 10, they're different people. What that means is there has never been anybody like you, there is nobody like you, and there never will be anyone quite like you. So if we remove your piece from the puzzle, you cannot be replaced. So for all of you graduating, going to college, getting a job, joining the military. Don't half-heartedly go with this. And I'm going to tell you what they didn't tell me as a kid. See, my story sounds great because I'm getting to do what I wanted to do. Nobody told me how hard it is. When you go to college and you miss your family and you want to give up, don't. Stay. When you go to play sports and it's a pain and you don't want to have to wake up and go to the weight room, do it anyways. Because we don't need a half-faded puzzle piece. We need you being fully you. And if there's anyone in this room right now in the darkness, I know what it's like. And I told myself when I was that 12-year-old kid, if I can ever get out of this, I will never forget this and I will go back. So I'm here today telling you that there is a way out of that. And if you completely give up, we can never replace you. All of you. We need you. I need you. So now go off and fully be your real self because nobody else can be. Thank you, guys.
Can you kind of run me through, at what point in life did you know you wanted to be an educator?
Yeah, I don't know of a time I wanted to do anything else. My dad was a teacher. That was a huge influence on me. I saw he was always around. You know what I mean? He was when we had time off, he was off, and I knew that he was passionate about what he did, and I wanted to coach. As I got older, I had a great experience in school. It wasn't one of those things where I dreaded school or anything, and had always had positive influences when I played sports. And I knew I wanted to coach. I knew I wanted to interact with people, wanted to teach, and impact, young people's lives. And now been lucky enough to do that for 22 years, in some fashion. I taught English for 9 years. 2 of those actually was at elementary school. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th at Unity School. And when I started, I was 22 years old, didn't know how good I had it, and went to the high school and taught predominantly juniors for a time. I was then athletic director and dean of students for 7 years, and I just finished my 8th year. So I'm just starting my 8th year as principal, and during that time I've also got to coach high school basketball. So it's been fun, man. There's nothing else I'd rather do.
So you've basically done it all. I mean, you started with elementary school kids, and you've coached, you've been dean of students, and now you're the principal.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. So let me ask you about that process. You were a teacher. Was there a point where you wanted to get into more of an administrator role?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy teaching. I love it. And the thing that about teaching that you lose as an administrator is that day-to-day contact, that day-to-day knowing. Not that I don't have contact with kids, but it's a different kind of contact. You went to school, you were closer with your teachers than you were your administrators. When I go to talk to somebody now, a lot of times the first question is, am I in trouble? Did I do something? Did I do something wrong? The athletic director job I started before I took it over full-time was helping Coach Kelly Glass, and that was a great learning experience for me. And again, it was getting to be involved with a bunch of sports while I was still coaching. So that was a role that I thought I would enjoy, and I did. And I never aspired to be a principal. It was never like, hey, I know I'm going to be a teacher and then I want to be a principal. It's not anything I wanted to do. But when I was in administration doing that dean job and the athletic director job, I had a son, and a principal job is busy, don't get me wrong, but the nights that an athletic director is out supervising, doing things, and I had kids, and I wanted to be around them more. And when our principal at the time, who's now our superintendent, Jason Hayes, when he moved, I was moved up to be superintendent. I was working with him, and it just it felt right to do. So I moved into that role and have really enjoyed it, because I still get to have my hands in athletic stuff. I'm still, a volunteer coach on the varsity basketball team with Coach Osman. And so it was never, when I was teaching, I thought, boy, I got to get out of this teaching. I mean, I would recommend to all teachers, if you love what you do, don't mess with happiness. It made sense for me. And we get into education to be around the students, you know, and now my job is more managing adults and routines and procedures and that kind of thing. But I still have I have to find more ways. You know, you have to work harder to get that contact and get those relationships with students on the one-to-one and on the daily basis.
And it's absolutely necessary. I mean, you've got to have administrators. You got to have a head coach. You don't have a running back or a quarterback without a head coach. So, are there specific challenges to being the principal that you might not have faced when you were a teacher?
It's bigger decisions. You know, I never have informal conversations anymore. Every conversation is live ammo when I'm talking to somebody. You know, it's I can't just casually mention something, because if I say I'm thinking about something, a kid or somebody may take it and say, well, this is what they're going to do. You know, so you got to watch what you say sometimes.
Yeah, and I do want to circle back. You mentioned that generally people have more contact with their teachers than the principal. If my mom ends up seeing this, that was true of me. I did not get to know my principals very well. I spent most of my time in the classroom where I belong, so I just want to say that I agree with you. That was definitely my experience.
And the teachers, I said, the teachers are the ones on the front line. I mean, they're the ones. Those are tough jobs. You know what I mean? They're every 47 minutes at our school, the bell's ringing. They're getting another group of 25. So it's a challenging part, and it's a hard job. Hard job.
Now I'm glad you said that, because now I've kind of lobbed you up some softballs, but I want to get into more of the meatier, maybe a little heavier subject. So what you just said, every 47 minutes, bell rings, and you have a teacher that gets a whole different group of kids, 25 to 30 kids, and they have to, 7 times a day, they have to know all those students' names, try to plan things to where each one of those kids is getting some type of direction that's customized for them, which is near impossible, but these people do it every day. And the way I view public education is that our educators are on the front lines every single day, and they are almost in what seems like an impossible situation. I mean, that seems hard. If you've ever tried to keep up with 2 children, and I know we're talking about teenagers, but if you ever try to keep up with 2 kids at one time, imagine being an elementary school teacher and you've got 30 of them for 8 hours, or being a high school teacher where you're getting a different group of teenagers every 47 minutes.
But what other job, what other occupation do we ask for one individual to deal with 25 to 30 different people at the same time, with different needs, with different responsibilities, with different abilities? Ask them to do it at an exceptional level and also keep everyone on task. I don't know of another occupation that does it, and we have people that do it remarkably well every day and are so underappreciated.
And y'all are not paid enough. I know you can't say that, but I'll say it. And I do also want to say, in my experience, I want to echo some of the things you've said. I think the entire time growing up, and I'm going to be brutally honest here, I'm not going to name names, I had one teacher that I think hated kids. And every kid from Metropolis already knows who I'm talking about. Don't need to name her name. I had one that was...
It's taking a turn.
Yeah. I had one that was... she just had a demeanor about her, but I look back now and I think, she did a really good job. But that's it. Every other teacher I had positive experiences with, especially like my elementary school and middle school teachers. They were very motherly, and these are all people I still see in the community. They're all very supportive of me. I had about 98% positive experiences from kindergarten through 12th grade, and I firmly believe those people really cared about me. And going back to my childhood, I had some challenges, some things I had to deal with. My father passed away when I was in high school, and when that happened, all of my teachers were extremely supportive of me. Obviously lenient on like turning in assignments and things, but they were legitimately concerned about me and my brother and my mom. So I just want to interject that I've had almost nothing but positive experiences with educators, and these people are all on some level I may not see them for 5 or 10 years, but they're still playing a role in my life. They're keeping up with me on Facebook. They're talking to me. If I see them in Walmart, they'll wave. So I can echo that and tell you, in my experience, it's true. Just about every teacher I ever had legitimately cared about me. All right, everybody, real quick behind the scenes, we had to briefly pull over and cool our cameras off because it's about 100 degrees outside and they all overheated. So we're back. I think the last thing that we talked about is how most of the teachers I had were tremendous people. I want to tell a real quick story. I think Parker will find this funny. The one teacher I'm talking about that hated children, again, not going to name this individual, but they were a PE teacher. And the first day of...
You got their blood type and birthday you want to give out to?
Yeah. I'll tell you their haircut. I will say this. This person looked kind of like the Russian's wife off of Rocky IV. I'll leave it at that. But first day of 3rd grade, we all go to PE class. And you know, most people, if they're teaching 8-year-olds PE, they would just roll out the kickballs and let the kids play. We got a speech on how no bad behavior would be tolerated. She had us all sit down on the gym floor, and I promise you, she said, your mommy and daddy may think you're special, but none of you are special. And this kid in my class, won't say his last name, first name was Dusty. I think he kind of leaned over and said something to another kid, and she said, Dustin, you think you're special? Of course, the kid's eyes got real big, and she said, 'cause you're not. So that was our first introduction to this woman, and I had her for 4 years. And if you're still out there and you see this, you know who you are, but I won't name you. All right, so let's get back to this interview. Okay, kind of a tough question here. Have you noticed since the time that you started, when you first became a teacher, as compared to now, have there been any trends in like behavior issues? Have you seen an uptick in like behavior problems? Have attention spans gone down? I mean, everybody has a smartphone now. Can you speak to that a little bit?
You know, behaviorally, we are very lucky at the high school, at Massac County High School. We don't have a ton of bad behavior. Yes, we have some outliers. We're people who cause problems, but we're fortunate we don't deal with a lot of the stuff that I hear other schools in our area, and of course everywhere, having to deal with. So students, kids, young people, whatever you want to say, they have not changed a lot over time. They still need and want direction. Most do not like chaos, or going into a room where things aren't being taught and there is just bad behavior going on all the time. What I think has changed is what we have asked of young people, what their responsibilities are. A lot of times things are being done for them. We're not allowing them to go through any adversity of any kind. You're running into areas where maybe we're trying to prepare the path for the child instead of preparing the child for the path. And I think we're failing people. And when I say we, I don't mean parents. I don't mean I just think on a whole, just systematically, communication or lack of that, is hurting. Just for example, there was a time if you wanted something as simple as a schedule change, you had a question, you would just go visit your counselor. You would go, talk to the teacher, whatever it may be. And now we get an email from the parent on behalf of the student. It's like, let your kid do that. Let them, be an advocate for themselves. I'm not saying parents shouldn't advocate for their kid. I'm not saying, but I'm talking about day-to-day routine stuff. Hey, I'd like to switch this 3rd period class. Well, you can, that's something that you can handle. And then you mentioned technology. I just think at a young age, everybody now coming up is getting exposed to a lot of freedoms on the technology side. I saw an ad where the smartphone had basically replaced everything that was in a Radio Shack ad from the 90s, right? Everything was on that one phone. And how much is that being monitored? So, you're running into things where maybe a kid may get bored, but we have teachers who overcome that. And there's nothing that replaces a good school day and good teaching and stimulating students and challenging students. And for the most part, that's what they want. But we could all, I think, ask more of them. And that's not a slap on students. at all. It's just, I think that's part of the path we're going down. And then I think the other thing is people don't communicate to each other. Like I now thank parents when they call and say, hey, this is what I was told. Could you explain this to me? And for the most part, either information's not right or maybe it is right and they just needed further clarification. But boy, people taking it to social media instead of asking a question, or, you know, you got a problem with a teacher, go talk to the teacher. Don't try to create a pep rally online of, I'm upset about this, but I'm not going to go talk to the person I'm upset with. And of course, you're going to have people who will chime in because they maybe had a bad experience. It's just that one-to-one communication of what's going on. We said this. I said this at freshman orientation, that, you know, our staff will never post anything negative about your son or daughter online, even if we're frustrated with them, you know, because we can't. But we're trying to open their eyes. But we would like the same in return. If you have an issue, come to us and we'll do our best to fix it. Because I assure you, we want what's best for your son or daughter. So there are some things there, and the school is at a disadvantage, because if somebody were to post something online that's negative, like, teachers can't jump in and defend themselves. People can't, because they're bound by privacy issues, you know. So they can't a lot of times even set the record straight. So there's just a level of civility that I think sometimes has been lost. Saying all that, our jobs are great, the people we deal with are great. There are just, with all the advances we have, there's sometimes I think we could even go back a little bit in the really the humane treatment that we have of other people, and then not losing out on civility.
I 1000% agree with the sentiment, and that's a big part of what we're trying to do with this podcast, even, is to get people from all different sectors of society to just talk about their day-to-day lives, because I feel like so much of what's happening now, people's view of other people, is based off of the magic box, you know, versus just talking to people, letting them talk about their experience. There's just not enough of that anymore. And when I was a kid, I knew all my neighbors, and we all hung out every day. And you don't see that a lot anymore either. With that being said, there are obviously very rewarding aspects of the job. Can you talk about some of your biggest joys that you experience being a principal?
Yeah, you know, on a different level as a teacher, which I know I've talked about, is getting to impact people. I mean, sometimes it's bigger decisions, you know, where you're coming up with something that the school can do or a program the school can do. But then you have kids that one of their biggest challenges is graduating high school, and then you're working with this kid and trying to help motivate this kid, and not just me as a principal. Justin Kendall's the assistant principal, does a great job of that. We have counselors, teachers, everybody, you know, trying to get people really across the finish line. And those are the people, when you see them, you know, at graduation day, you're like, you know, you feel immense amount of pride. And, you know, have former students come up to us, you know, after they've graduated or joined the military or gone on to college, and thank you for what you've done, and seeing how talented, you know, people are and the accomplishments they have. And the other thing is being a small part of people's dreams getting to come true. And hopefully where they started and in this town and coming to this high school, and then wherever they go from there. I mean, we all look from afar and are just, we have a lot to be proud of, and a lot of the people we've come through. So it comes back, it's a relationship business, and it comes back to having a small impact on those people's lives. And it's there's nothing like it. And when you talk to people who work in education, I assure you, they don't do it for the money and the fame. They do it for that feeling of helping people. And it's a drug in and of itself. You know, you do a little bit of it, you want to do more of it. And I'm proud to say that my kids go to school in Massac Unit 1 and have the teachers that they have, and I'm immensely thankful that I get to do the job I do and have the support that I have and working here and getting to work with this community.
So with that, with rewarding experiences, you asked me to come back, I guess it was May, and to talk to the student body for something called Senior Signing Day. And I have to tell you, that was a tremendous experience for me. I was not expecting something of that scope. Do you want to kind of explain what Senior Signing Day is?
Yeah, So this started in 2016, and our district kind of went to more of a focus on doing something after high school, you know, whether that be college, university, vocational, armed forces, apprenticeship program. I mean, all studies show that if you do something, if you get some sort of training, some sort of education after high school, and your quality of life is better, your life expectancy is better, your income is going to be better. I mean, so that was the focus, and that was kind of a district-wide focus on promoting doing something, and a culmination of that is our signing day. And we have a lot of very talented students who were leaving and going places, and if maybe not getting the accolades they needed. It wasn't an athletic scholarship, maybe they weren't a valedictorian or even an honor graduate, but they were going to do something. We used that as a day to celebrate them for graduation, celebrate them, let their family celebrate their family. It's a lot of work, to get to do that. And kind of one more thing, and it was the brainchild of our school counseling department. Currently, those counselors are Leslie Goins and Lisa Ailey, and it's been a great event. We have had numerous. The program is we invite an alumnus to come back and speak, and we tell them you get about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, talk about what you're going to be talking to the student body. Seniors are going to be there, their parents. What do you want to talk about? A lot of it is how to prepare, what you need to do, giving advice, telling your story. And we have been able to pick people every time that have brought something different to the table, and it's been rewarding. It's probably the best thing we do, and we hear a lot of tremendous support from seniors who went through it, and their parents just thanking us. And I'm glad that our school does it. There are people who put a lot of work into it, and Leslie Goins really spearheads it every year. And there's just it takes a lot to go through it, but it's worth every bit of it to see those seniors and have everybody get to celebrate them one more time before graduation.
And I got to tell you, so again, what's about to come out of my mouth? This is Corey talking. This is not the principal. When you first asked me to come back this year, I was excited to do it. But I had the stereotypes in my head, so I thought, I'm going to walk in, these kids are all going to be vaping, and they're all going to be named like Keely, Kaylee, Callie, Cranston, Caden, Aiden, Jaden, Raiden. What am I getting into here? They're going to have the Patrick Mahomes broccoli haircut. And I have to tell you, and I genuinely mean this, that was the most well-behaved group of students I have ever been around. I was so impressed. And it wasn't just like we had 50 kids there. It was the entire school. The entire school paid attention to every aspect of the presentation, clapped for all of their peers. So as an outsider who hasn't been back to Massac for several years, and I don't have a child in school or anything, I have to say that seemed like the most well-oiled machine. Y'all must be doing something right. And parents, you must be doing something right. Your kids were extremely respectful, so I was thoroughly impressed. So I want to thank you for that, but I also just want to thank you for what you do. Thank you. You are a true rock star, and all of the teachers we have in this community, you guys are the real rock stars. So Mr. Windhorst, I want to say thanks again. Thanks for coming on, being the first guest, and good luck on the school year.
Corey, I appreciate the time, and just know everybody in this community is so proud of you and what you've done. And you started playing throughout this area and in Southern Illinois, and there would be people like, hey, do you know Corey Evitts? He's from time? I said, I've heard of him. I've heard of him a time or two. But everybody's so proud of you. I appreciate your friendship and letting me come on and talk. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Windhorst. All right, guys. Well, we have reached our destination for today. I want to thank all of you for riding along with me, and hopefully this is the first of many journeys that we take together. Before I sign off, I have a few more items of business. I want to say thank you again to my guest today, Parker Windhorst. As I mentioned in my speech, I have known Parker since I was a little kid. I've known his whole family, actually. Parker's parents are wonderful people. His dad was the assistant principal at Massac County when I was in high school. His brother is an Illinois state politician. His name is Patrick Windhorst. He is an extremely genuine person, a very good guy. The whole family is committed to service, and I can tell you that Parker comes by that honestly, and he is called to serve. He definitely has a calling to be in education and to be around people and to be leading people. Just today, in the amount of time that we were driving around town and getting ready before we hit record, he probably saw 10 or 15 people he knew on the street, and he would point out the window and be like, I know that guy. Hey, I have that kid's brother right now in the high school. That guy was one of my first students. We stopped at the gas station and went inside, and I used the restroom, and by the time I came out, Parker was holding court talking to like 2 or 3 different people. So he definitely loves people, and he's definitely in the job that best suits him. So I want to give one more thank you to the 2022 Southern Illinois Principal of the Year, Mr. Parker Windhorst. Now let me tell you about what's coming up this week. I am going to be playing at home on Thursday night, September 5th, Thursday night, from 7 to 10. I will be at Doe's Eat Place in Paducah. Doe's is the first place I ever played. It's the first time I ever got paid to play anywhere was at Doe's. So that's my home venue. So come see me in my natural habitat on Thursday, September 5th, from 7 to 10, Doe's Eat Place. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsors. We have Pizza Inn in Paducah, Kentucky. Guys, Pizza Inn is the best pizza buffet in the entire area. They have every pizza you can think of, pepperoni, sausage, cheese, all of that. And then they have a whole bunch of pizzas you would never think of. All kinds of different combinations of pizzas and different flavors. They have dessert pizzas, they have an ice cream machine, and they have the best salad bar in the entire area. So if you want to eat healthy, you could still pop in. So go to Pizza Inn, tell them Corey sent you. And also want to give a huge shout out to my other sponsor today, Metropolis Music and Media. That company is owned and operated by one of my best friends, Toby Glass. Toby is the editor for this podcast. So if you like what you saw and heard today, that's all Toby. So if you need video work done, you need photos taken, if you need help with a sound installation at your church or your business, Toby Glass is your guy. Metropolis Music and Media, that's on Market Street in Metropolis. And one last item here. Next week on the podcast, I will be talking to the mayor of my hometown of Paducah, Kentucky, Mr. George Bray. So you don't want to miss that. Next Monday night, September 9th, Mr. George Bray will be on the pod, and we will be getting political. So I want to thank you guys once again. Remember, my name is Corey Evitts, and I'm not a rock star, but I live a pretty rock and roll life. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week.